The second opera of our season is Dark Sisters by the American composer Nico Muhly. Muhly was born in 1981. He's one of the most popular and prolific American composers writing today. He has a huge following on Spotify with many recordings to his credit. And he's composed for film, dance, theater, and he's worked with such diverse pop indie folk artists such as Joanna Newsom, Bjork, and Anthony and the Johnsons. Now, Muhly has been commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera on 2 separate occasions already. The Met commissioned him to write Marnie in 2018, and both the Met and English National Opera commissioned his second opera, Two Boys, in 2014. Muhly has been described by the Metropolitan Opera general manager Peter Gelb as one of the most brilliant composing talents out there, unquote. Dark Sisters was his first opera. It was composed in 2011, and it will be performed the final weekend in August as part of our 2023 season. On one level, the story of this opera is relatively simple. It's a woman's journey into the unknown, away from the only life she has ever known, living in a Mormon compound. She finds the courage and the resolve to do so, knowing that she could be mistaken, and not knowing what lies ahead. She leaves her child and the other sister wives behind in this polygamous community. So Dark Sisters charts one woman's quest for self-discovery, self-discovery in a world where personal identity is forbidden. It's a very skillful libretto in that it does not provide an easy conclusion. Unlike some contemporary composers who, in writing for the opera, they might treat the voice as if it's a member of the orchestra. Muhly is a very vocal composer, which might sound odd to say that about opera, but he's a composer who, for me, understands the human voice and knows how to write for the human voice. His background as a choral singer, which I understand goes back to his childhood, is very keenly felt in this opera, particularly in the ensembles for 6 female voices, is some of the most beautiful choral writing I've ever heard, not only in modern opera, but in all opera. It's an exceptionally beautiful opera from a vocal standpoint. In this opera, I hear the influence of composers like Aaron Copland, if you think of the sort of wide-open harmonies of a piece like Appalachian Spring. John Adams, Philip Glass, whom Muhly did assist for years, Benjamin Britten, even Oliver Messiaen, Messiaen, the great French contemporary composer. His work, From the Canyons to the Stars, is a great love of mine. And Muhly himself, in his notes, and I encourage you to go to his website and read about Dark Sisters. He talks about trying to capture the landscape of Utah, the landscape of the sky and the stars, and the exquisite scenery in rural Utah. So this is music that is tonal. It's certainly accessible. I would say his music is music that communicates. He actually is a very communicative composer. There's an immediacy. There's a full-throated lyricism to his vocal writing. If you're new to his music, I would, and he's written many pieces in a wide variety of forms, as I mentioned earlier. But I would start with the choral music, particularly a piece called Bright Mass with Cannons, I think is a really great introduction to his choral music. Among his instrumental music, maybe the cello concerto is a good place to start. The viola concerto is quite beautiful. But go onto Spotify and you have all kinds of options. When I think about our programming model at OrpheusPDX and wanting to present, in my mind, recent great works, My own very subjective, very personal means of evaluating and considering a new opera is relatively simple. I always ask myself, does the work continue to speak to me? Perhaps, after the initial, splash of a new premiere, and if it's based on perhaps a sensational subject matter, once that's died down, and once we've lived with the opera for a few years, I always ask myself, does it continue to speak to me? I saw the world premiere production of Dark Sisters in 2012, and this one has stayed with me. This one has definitely stayed with me. Actually, I would say it's haunted me for the past 10 years. I think it's one of the best modern operas in the rep today. It's a powerful libretto. The libretto is quite well constructed, and this opera has deeply expressive music. This is a very rich work. It's a rich, complex work, and I believe it's here to stay. I believe it's one of those operas that will continue to sort of stay with us over time. And I'm certainly very excited to be presenting it as a West Coast premiere.